What's going on, everybody? Back again. Thanks for joining us back on the channel. Guess what time it is? It is time for a little bass fishing tip. The month of November, it can be a kind of a tricky time of the year, and we're going to dive into that. But before we get too far into this video, I have to say a huge shout out and thank you to Decked, the in-truck storage system. They're presenting this video, they're sponsoring this video, so thank you so much for all that. You know, guys, you hear me talk about the Decked all the time. It's something that I've had in the back of all my vehicles now for about 5 or 6 years, and it's awesome. Speaks for itself. It's got the big giant drawers right here. I can put all my tackle boxes in here for during the fishing season. Obviously, keep everything in there, tools, whatnot. During the hunting season, I can take all that out, put guns in there. I don't play golf, but if I did, guess what? I could put golf clubs in there. The great thing about the Decked system, here's what it is. Break it down for you. This is all a composite material. So number one, it doesn't rot, it doesn't get waterlogged like some of the other things that are out there on the market. So, and you can put 2,000 pounds of payload on top of this thing. So that's amazing. So even if you didn't have a cap, you can actually put all the stuff that you want to put in the back of your truck on a regular basis on top of this Decked system, and it's not going to damage it. 2,000 pounds, it's good to go. It can rain on it, it's not going to leak, it's not going to warp, do any of that. When you close the tailgate, obviously all your stuff's locked up, and it's just a really good accessory for your vehicle. It's something that's kept me really organized and obviously safe and secure. So we're going to drop a link in the video down below. Guys, check it out. They fit just about every truck out there on the market right now, so go to their website, check it out, take a peek, and they've got lots of cool accessories too. They've got little toolboxes, they have an in-bed toolbox, they've got all kind of cool stuff going on at Decked. So thank you so much, Decked, for sponsoring this video. But now it is time to jump into November, time of the year. It's a fickle time of the year. It's one of the times of the year that can be difficult, it can be frustrating, it can be all of the above. That's why a lot of people, I think, go hunting during this time of the year. But for me, I don't do a lot of hunting, so we fish a lot of times in October and November. But again, it can be frustrating. I remember on the Bass Opens a couple years ago trying to qualify, we had a lot of tournaments late that fall, and it was just, the fishing was tough, but the fish were very particular that time of the year. So I'm gonna talk all about that, but I'm also gonna show you a couple lures that I like to throw this time of the year that might help you put an extra fish in the boat. But really, it's the mindset of it. I wanna explain what the fall bite is. It's that transition time of the year. The water temperatures are starting to change, they're starting to go down. Everything's kind of getting ready for that big reset. The bait is starting to migrate to the creeks. The bait a lot of times this time of the year is small, and the fish get really keyed in on the bait. They get real keyed in on the size of the bait they're feeding on. So the biggest and the first tip I can give you is pay attention to what size bait these fish are eating and how they're reacting to it. Are they busting on top? Or do you see big clouds of bait on your graph, 10, 15 feet down with a lot of marks in it? You got to kind of make that decision. The other thing that's hard for this tip is that depending on where you are in the country is going to really dictate how far along in this process you are. Because the farther north you go, you might even be getting some really cool weather, maybe even snow at this point. But right now here in the south, or the central part of the United States, it's that fickle time of the year. So here's another little tip, another little rule that I kind of set up a few years ago. And it's like, in the fall, I'm gonna throw moving baits. Moving baits this time of the year that resemble bait fish is really my go-to. Now, I will still throw a worm, I still will throw a drop shot, I'll still flip a jig, but I am gonna really heavily lean on moving baits. And again, things that imitate a shad. So your whites, your chartreuse and whites, things like that. I'm staying away from the bluegill colors this time of year on your swim jigs and things like that. Now, your jigs, your green pumpkins and stuff like that's fine. But these fish are keyed in on eating bait fish right now. And so that's what you want to spend the majority of your time fishing, trying to locate those bass. Now, again, I talked about the size of the bait. This time of the year, the bait is small. And so a lot of times I'll fish smaller than normal crankbaits, smaller than normal swim jigs, smaller than normal everything, really. I'm just really trying to match that hatch. One little crankbait that I like a lot is this little Guggen Squad crankbait right here. Pretty compact, runs about 4 to 6 feet of water. I'm gonna rig it up on 10-pound. And by the way, that's all my crankbaits are pretty much on 10-pound line. Real important to me, unless I'm throwing a square bill, which we'll talk about that here in a minute. Square bills, I'll go up a little bit on size, but this is 10-pound P-line tactical. This is 610 B-lat rod. It's a really good little crankbait rod. And, I'm gonna fish that thing on the bank, cranking the shorelines, hitting hard targets, rocks, windy points, things like that, where that bait is probably pushed up on that bank, and those fish will feed on it. So that size right there, a lot of times in the fall, that will get more bites than your traditional size crankbaits. I don't know, you know, again, it's a funky time of the year, things get a little squirrely, but these size lures will typically outproduce your normal size crankbaits this time of year. So that's one right there. The other that I'm gonna fish, talking about it here. I'll pull this out. Oh, I forgot about this one. It's a little clickbait right here. This is a 3/8 ounce clickbait, Guggen Squad Lures. It's a different kind of vibrating jig, right? The way that they've designed this head really creates a different vibration in the water. And you say to yourself, well, I catch a lot of fish on chatterbaits. Yeah, and chatterbaits are good, clickbaits are good too. Here's the thing, and it's the same thing with lipless crankbaits. It's like having a variety of different tones or vibrations in your lures is good, because there's certain times of the year or certain situations where a certain vibration or sound will outproduce. I don't know why that is, but I like to have options, right? So this right here, set up the way it is, again, shad colored. It's a little sexy shad color, that little baby blue on the back, but that right there is set up nice. I've got a smaller swim bait on the back of this. In the springtime, I'm gonna fish a little bit bigger swim bait, you know, like a 4.8, something big, bulky, try to get those females. But right now, I'm just trying to get bites. So that smaller, compact clickbait like that works really well. The clickbait for me, I'm gonna throw this on, if I'm in Florida or in the South around a lot of grass, I'm gonna throw it on braided line, 50-pound P-line X braid. Otherwise, I'm throwing it on 15 to 17-pound P-line Tactical, which is the standard fluorocarbon that I use for a lot of stuff. I mean, that right there is the size line that I use, probably more than any size line, just because it's just a good all-around line. It's a good all-around line for swim jigs, lipless crankbaits, you know, the clickbaits, all that kind of stuff, spinner baits. That's a good size line, and that Tactical really does well, it performs well. I haven't had any issues with that. So that clickbait is a good one to throw this time of the year, or a vibrating jig. The other, you know, if you live in the South where you've got a lot of grass, maybe in Texas where you've got some topped out grass, you know, you hear about that fall frog bite. Now, if you're too far north, you're probably already past that, but depending on where you are, a frog is a pretty darn good way of catching some big fish. This is the popping frog, the filthy frog. And this time of the year, this one's not trimmed up. I'll trim up the legs a little bit. Again, trying to make this bait a little bit less, you know, size-wise. So I'll trim the legs up quite a bit, maybe only leave about that much. And that makes that bait just a little bit smaller. I'm gonna fish this around all your floating vegetation. So what happens is you hear some of the fishermen talk about fishing the cheese mats, if you heard about the cheese mats. And that's the grass that starts to die off, and it literally floats up to the surface, creates a canopy. Underneath, there's very little stalks that are connecting back down to the bottom, just a few, but a lot of that is dislodging. It starts to decompose, and when that grass mat does that, those bluegill get in there, those bass get under there, they can kind of roam around wherever they want, and a frog is a deadly way of catching some big fish that time of year. But again, you've got to pay attention to the size of the bait that's in the area, and just, you know, kind of figure out the way that they want it. That's the biggest thing. It's size of bait and it's technique. You know, I don't have the exact technique to tell you to throw, but it's just like, be versatile, try things, play around with stuff. This is the time of the year you'll catch bass on techniques and lures, or a combination of both, where you're like, I've never done that before. That's pretty cool. I've never caught fish quite like this. But that's just that fall thing, you know, and a lot of times in the spring or other times of the year, that doesn't work at all. So it's one of those times of year. Now, the other bait that I throw, and these are all my square bills in here. You can see I've got a bunch of them. This one right here, that is 2 to 5 foot banger right there. That dude, it's got a nice little rattle in it. Nice little, like a one knocker sound. But again, it's not real big. That's like a 1.5 size if you're kind of comparing it to the Lucky Craft stuff. But that is a bait that I throw in the fall. That size, 100%. You know, and if you start getting some cooler weather, you can start fishing some rock walls, some bridges, some riprap banks, you know, stuff like that, lay down trees, places like that where these fish will get square bills like that will work well. With the square bill, and I know I talked about the 10-pound line on that crankbait, on the other crankbait, this is where I'm gonna throw probably 14, 15, or 17, something in that range, 12. I guess you could get away with 12. Again, all based on the cover. If I'm throwing this thing up in trees, coming down off the ends of laydowns, 15, 17. I'm really trying to do two things with the line size. One, I'm trying to get the bait down to the strike zone. Two, I'm trying to protect it from breaking off. So there's a little fine balance in it. You have to make that decision. But if I'm just fishing down a bare shoreline, crashing it along the bottom, fishing around some submerged grass, you know, 12, 15-pound line's great. If I'm around those laydown trees along the shoreline, or I'm throwing that bait all the way up in the middle of the laydown and trying to reel it through, you know, that 17 is gonna be a little bit better. It's gonna hold that bait up a little higher. And if I get hung up in the tree, you can pop it a few times. That heavier line sends a bigger shock down the line, and usually it'll dislodge your bait. So, you know, you can fish more effectively with heavier line with these in real thick cover. So that's a good little bait right there. And again, you know, your shad colors. Now, look, I have chartreuses in here. I've got all that. And of course, if it's a bunch of rain that's happened and the water's muddy and you need to go to a chartreuse, you know, have at it. But you know, typically it's white, white, white for me this time of the year. Now, if all that fails, okay, and that's all moving baits, all that fails, I'm gonna default to low and slow. And we just got back from a tournament, Team USA deal at Lake Murray. And it was fall, obviously. There's fish schooling. We caught some fish on topwater. We caught some fish on swim baits. But we really caught a lot of fish on drop shots. This exact rod right here, matter of fact, that favorite, this is a jackhammer. Got it rigged up with a Stratic 10-pound P-line braid, matched up to a, I believe this is the 9. This is the brand new line, the SpinX fluorocarbon leader, which I'm in love with, by the way. That's the 9. That's amazing. And, you know, basically a 1/4 ounce weight, and just pitching it around in the shallows, and that's 6, 8, 10 foot of water. We use the Panoptics a lot. So as you start seeing bait fish around, you start seeing fish swimming around out there. Because again, this time of the year, these fish, you know, they'll be in a brush pile, of course, but they'll also just be roaming around on bait. You'll just find schools of fish just going down do-nothing banks, you know, on a pot of bait. So a drop shot like this is a drag and drop. This is the bigger drag and drop. And 2 ways to rig it. You can rig it Texas rig like this, which if you're around a lot of cover, you're gonna wanna do that. Okay, just like that. Now, I'll tell you another way to rig it. Because it's all about, right, being the most effective and efficient in these tournaments. So if I'm around a lot of cover, a lot of brush, I'm gonna fish it Texas rig. But another way to rig this thing, if I'm just pitching it around like at Murray, for example, not a lot going on, just open water stuff, I'm just gonna thread it right on the hook like this here. Take that little Trocar straight shank, go right down the back of the bait, come out right there dead center, push it up. Now that hook is sticking out the back of that. It's ready to get them. Ready to get them right there. Look at that. So, you know, that fish comes up and bites that bait. The hook's farther back, of course. It's totally exposed. It's gonna get them. So if you're fishing open water, you're just casting to like individual fish that you see. And you can also nose hook it, you know, with a regular round bend. But for the most part, you're gonna wanna stay with this long shank trocar right there, a little 1/0. So that's a good way of catching them right there. And we caught a lot of fish in that tournament, you know, just pitching around. And again, we spent a couple days in practice throwing buzz baits, which I didn't talk about. Buzz baits are good. We threw, you know, top waters and stuff. We did catch them on that, but the majority of the fish we caught in that tournament were on that drop shot right there. And that was just because they were being weird. You know, again, you got to think outside the box a little bit. You've got to match the hatch. And you do all that this time of the year, and you're gonna have some good success. Be patient. It can be a little frustrating, but you'll figure it out. Hopefully these tips help you. I wanna thank you from the bottom of my heart for watching our video, and also do me a huge solid. If you like this video, be sure to smash that subscribe button. We'd love to have you join our channel, because we've got tons of stuff on the channel. Matter of fact, here's a whole playlist right here, some great tips for you to check out throughout the channel. So thank you for all the support, guys. We'll see you. Bye!